So if we get back to the definition of digital poetry, we can understand also that cyber poetry comprises poetry generated by cyber tools, that is computers, or poetry dealing with cyberculture. So at the origin, cyberculture corresponds, in fact, very quickly, if we consider that very quickly, on a light tone, humorously. In fact, it corresponds to online sects that loners engage in if they are too boring or too ugly to get a real boyfriend or girlfriend. Beyond that gross touch of humor, we should keep in mind that cyberculture is indeed close to virtual reality. Cyber is a prefix used in a growing number of technology and in IT terms to describe new things that are made possible by the use of computers. Originally also, we're very far from cybersex here. Originally, cybernetics come from the Greek elsman, and it was the study of governing systems, and it was in fact invented, in fact the internet was invented by the American military, who wanted to invent a controlling system based on virtuality to prevent nuclear attacks. So if we briefly summarize what cyberculture is, that's something very close to cyber poetry. It's a virtual massive global culture that spreads through internet networks. It's also understood by the Oxford Dictionary as the social conditions brought about by the widespread use of computer networks for communication, entertainment, and business. So you see that it's not only military based, but also for entertainment. The term also has counterculture orientations, like a movement that precisely runs counter to the main institutions and enables more liberty, more creativity. So that's why probably digital poetry emerged first, not at the center in the mainstream, but right at the margin of literature. And it takes time for digital poetry to get accepted. What is cyberspace? The term is used because, of course, cyber poetry evolved in cyberspace. So the term is used to describe the space created by people around the globe to get to diverse projects that could be artistic, business projects, playful projects, political goals. And the term cyberspace, probably you will see this with my colleague François Henry, is that the term cyberspace was coined by William Gibson in his novel Neuromancer, where he described it as an unthinkable complexity. So cyberspace is an unthinkable complexity. So it creates virtual communities that can counterbalance the power of the state with intellectual and economic freedom. So positively again, cyberspace was seen as by some analysts as a catalyzer of dreams, as poetry inhabited and through which we could navigate. Cyberspace, cyberculture, okay, we also need to consider cyberpunk culture, because the digital humanities as a discipline were rooted in cyberpunk culture and science fiction. In fact, if you read the John Hopkins Guide to Digital Media, you will see that, in fact, it's defined, so cyberpunk is defined as a literary genre that appeared in the 1980s and 1990s to offer poetic works that denounced the disadvantages of harsh capitalism. So that was something dystopian. That was something that offered a counterculture, in fact. So it originated from a lack of faith in our society. And of course, digital technology offered these counterculture people a cheap outlet. At the time, hackers were seen as heroes, and since the birth of cyberpunk culture, technologies have moved forward. And of course, maybe now the genre is a bit outdated. Still, it has promoted many of the films and novels that surf on this counterculture. For example, The Matrix, that was influenced by Neuromancer. For example, Alex Rivera's 2008 film Sleep Dealer, that deals with cyberpunk motifs. And of course, closer to us, we've got Avatar 2009, with the focus on modified states of consciousness. But it is a trend that was launched truly indeed by William Gibson's Neuromancer in 1984, and it dealt with the impact of technology on our current society and the nature of our lives. In the novel, if you've read it or if you've seen the film, people can make the choice of living in cyberspace during their lifetime or after their death. And computer codes are seen as artificially intelligent. The biological alteration of the self is also a topic of Blade Runner, based on Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And cyberpunks here reject existing society that leads towards dehumanization. The world appears as dehumanized. And in Ridley Scott's film, Blade Runner, you can see that Los Angeles appears as a dark city, and Blade Runners have to kill replicants, androids, that look like real humans. Because those clones were exploited as slaves in colonies outside the Earth. 4 clones rebelled and got back to Earth to find their creator. But there's a difference between the cyber world and science fiction. We could say that cyber worlds, in cyber worlds, we're closer to the present. It deals with our current society and it adds some views on technology. Whereas in science fiction, works are more futuristic, I would say. So in the 1984 science fiction novel by American-Canadian Gibson, he tells the story of a computer hacker. And indeed, neuromancer is a portmanteau word of the words neuro, romancer and necromancer. So here Gibson revitalizes the science fiction story with this fusion of romanticism, technology, data, and consciousness. Digital poetry is also akin to animated poetry. So in fact, animated poetry is a subgenre of cyberpoetry that explores the science potential when letters can become images and when motion enriches the creation or reading process. And this animated genre is also, of course, part of animated films, TV series and videos, And it's interesting to note that manga was the name given to Japanese comics. I think that some manga films or cartoons or writings are related to cyberculture because they are set in the future, because their style and cultural views give a good vision of cyberculture, of post-humans. They also deal with computer games, with cyborgs, and they are related to cyberpunk films.